The night had fallen heavy and quiet over the small border town. Snowflakes danced in the cold wind, settling on rooftops and the wooden fences that lined the dusty streets. The kind of night that made even the bravest person hurry inside. Daniel, a widowed rancher in his late 30s, was closing the barn doors after feeding his horses. His hands were rough and calloused from years of hard work, and the cold bit through his worn gloves. The fire in his house was probably warm now, but out here, every breath felt like ice in his lungs. He finished with the last door and paused, wiping the sweat and snow from his brow. That's when he heard a soft, hesitant sound behind him. At first, he thought it was just the wind, or perhaps a stray animal wandering nearby. But then came the faint whisper, almost a voice carried on the wind. "Please, don't turn me away." Daniel froze. He scanned the snow-covered yard, heart tightening. There, just beyond the dim lantern light, stood a young woman. She was wrapped in a thin blanket that did little to protect her from the bitter cold. Her dark hair clung to her face, wet from snow and frost. Her eyes were wide, filled with fear, but also as strange. Intense determination, she took a small step forward, shivering violently. I can offer what no other woman can," she said again, her voice quivering but steady. Daniel's brow furrowed. He didn't understand what she meant, but the words, the desperation, the sheer courage in her eyes made something stir inside him. He knew he couldn't just turn her away into the cold. He called out gently, trying not to startle her further. "Are you all right? Who are you?" The woman hesitated, glancing around as if expecting someone to appear from the darkness. I need help. Please," she said, her teeth chattering. Daniel moved closer cautiously. The snow crunched under his boots, loud in the still night. He saw frost forming in her hair, noticed the way her fingers trembled uncontrollably, even inside the blanket. It was clear she had been out here for a long time. Maybe ours. The cold wasn't just uncomfortable, it was dangerous. "Come on." "You shouldn't be out here like this," Daniel said, extending his hand. "Let's get you inside." The woman hesitated, then slowly reached for his hand. When she stood, Daniel noticed her height, the lean strength in her arms, despite the obvious fatigue. There was something almost otherworldly about her presence and energy that made him both cautious and curious. As they walked toward the house, she pulled the blanket tighter around her shoulders. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the wind. Inside the house, warmth hit them like a wave. The fire crackled in the hearth, filling the room with golden light. Daniel led her to a chair and offered her a warm drink. Steam rose from the mug, carrying the scent of herbs and spices that Daniel had bought from town earlier in the week. The woman's hands shook as she took it, wrapping them around the cup as if it were a lifeline. "I'm Daniel," he said softly. "You're safe here." "What's your name?" "Kiona," she replied, her voice gaining a little strength as she spoke. I don't have much time. They're after me, I need." She stopped, as if realizing the words might scare him. Then she swallowed hard and looked into his eyes. "I can help you. In ways no one else can. Please, just hear me out." Daniel's brow furrowed. "Help me how?" Kiona shook her head slightly, uncertain if she should explain everything to a stranger. I have abilities. My people trained me. I can sense danger, illness, even before it comes. But some people want to use me for their own gain. I ran to protect myself, and I didn't know where else to go." Daniel blinked. He didn't believe in magic or strange abilities. But there was a truth in her eyes, a mix of fear and honesty that he couldn't ignore. She was clearly telling him the truth about something. And if she had been outside in the freezing cold like this, she needed help now. "All right," Daniel said finally, trying to keep his voice calm. "You'll stay here tonight. Tomorrow, we'll figure things out. You can rest now." Kiona nodded, relief washing over her face. She sank into the chair, letting the warmth of the fire seep into her frozen limbs. Daniel couldn't help but notice the intensity in her gaze, even as exhaustion began to take over. There was a quiet strength about her that made him wary and intrigued at the same time. As she sipped the warm drink, Her hands slowly stopped shaking. Daniel brought her a blanket to cover her shoulders more fully. "You need to eat something too," he said. He set out bread and cheese from the pantry. Kiona hesitated for a moment, then took a small bite. The wind outside moaned against the walls, rattling the windows. Daniel glanced outside, worried someone might be following her, or worse, looking for trouble. Kiona noticed the tension in his eyes. "They won't find me tonight," she said quietly. "Not if you help me stay hidden. I promise I won't bring danger to your home. I need a safe place to rest." Daniel studied her for a long moment. There was an honesty in her voice that he couldn't question. She had come to him in the cold, alone and desperate, and somehow he knew that turning her away would be a mistake. Maybe even a dangerous one for her and for him. "You'll stay," he said finally. "You can rest by the fire tonight. We'll figure the rest out in the morning." Kiona's lips curved into the smallest of smiles, almost imperceptible, but it was enough to make Daniel feel a sense of relief. She wasn't just another stranger. She was different. He didn't know how or why, but he could feel it. As the night grew darker and the wind howled outside, Daniel sat nearby, keeping an eye on her. Kiona drifted off into a light, uneasy sleep. Her breathing was shallow, but she seemed safer now. He realized he didn't just feel responsible for her. It was as if fate had brought her to his doorstep for a reason he couldn't yet understand. Outside, the snow continued to fall, thick and silent. The town was asleep, unaware of the small miracle taking place in Daniel's warm little house. Inside, a stranger, a woman with a secret and a past full of danger, rested for the first time in what felt like an eternity. And Daniel, the lonely widower, realized that this night, which had started like any other cold winter evening, had changed everything. There was no way to know what tomorrow would bring, or the challenges that lay ahead. But for now, the fire crackled, the snow fell gently outside, and to lives, strangers yet connected, shared a fragile moment of safety in the heart of the cold night. Kiona's words echoed in Daniel's mind, even as he drifted into his own thoughts. "I can offer what no other woman can." He didn't understand them fully, but he sensed their meaning would become clear in time, and somehow he felt that their meeting tonight was just the beginning of something far greater than either of them could imagine. The morning light slowly filtered through the thin curtains, casting a soft glow across Daniel's small ranch house. Outside, the snow had settled into a thick white blanket, covering the fields and fences. The horses in the barn were quiet, their breaths forming small clouds in the cold morning air. Inside, the fire still crackled gently in the hearth, filling the room with warmth and comfort. Daniel stirred awake, rubbing his eyes. He turned his head toward the chair by the fire and saw Kiona sitting there, staring into the flames. Her eyes looked tired, but there was a quiet strength in them. She had survived the night in the cold, and somehow, despite everything she had been through, she seemed calm now. "Morning," Daniel said softly, not wanting to startle her. "Did you sleep at all?" Kiona turned her head slowly and gave a small nod. "A little," she admitted. I didn't sleep well, but the warmth helped." She pulled the blanket tighter around her shoulders. "Thank you for letting me stay." Daniel moved closer and poured her another cup of hot herbal tea. The steam rose between them, carrying a comforting scent. He handed it to her, and she accepted it with a grateful smile. For a moment, they sat quietly, listening to the soft crackle of the fire and the wind outside. After a pause, Kiona spoke again, her voice hesitant but firm. "I should explain. I didn't come here by accident. I'm not running from just anyone. There are people who want to use my abilities for their own gain. My people taught me to heal, to sense danger, to know what others cannot. But some see it as power to control. I ran because I refused to let them take it from me." Daniel frowned, trying to understand. "Abilities? What kind of abilities?" Kiona hesitated, her gaze shifting to the fire. "I can sense illness before it becomes serious. I can feel danger before it happens. I've helped my people avoid harm, and I've healed those who were very sick. But it also makes me a target. Some people want me to work for them, to heal only when they command it. I won't let that happen." Daniel listened carefully. He had never believed in such things before, but there was an honesty in her tone, in the way she spoke. She wasn't bragging. She wasn't lying. He could see it in her eyes. This woman, this stranger who had appeared at his door in the cold, had endured hardships he could barely imagine. "You're safe here," Daniel said finally. "No one's going to hurt you in my home. You can rest, and we can figure out the rest later. Right now, you need to eat something. You must be exhausted." Kiona nodded, her lips curving into a small smile. "Thank you," she whispered. She picked up a piece of bread Daniel had prepared and took a bite, savoring it slowly. The warmth of the fire and the food seemed to calm her nerves, even if only slightly as she ate. Kiona began to open up more, her voice steady now. She told Daniel about her life in the Apache village, about the elders who had trained her, and the small community that had always relied on her abilities. "I was taught to help, to protect, to heal," she said. "But the outside world doesn't always understand. Some people fear what they cannot control." Daniel nodded slowly. He understood fear, and he understood danger. But the bravery it must have taken for her to run alone into the snow, seeking help from a stranger, made him respect her even more. He could see the burden she carried, the weight of responsibility, the constant threat of those who would misuse her gifts. Just as they were talking, sudden noise from outside startled them both. Daniel moved toward the window, peering out into the snow-covered yard. At first he saw nothing. But then a faint figure appeared, moving cautiously along the edge of the property. Daniel felt a pang of worry. Could it be one of the men Kiona was running from? He turned back to her. "You said they're after you?" he asked quietly. Kiona nodded. Her eyes were serious, focused. "Yes. I don't know when they'll come, but they won't stop until they find me. That's why I had to leave quickly, without telling anyone. I couldn't risk bringing them here before I was ready." Daniel considered her words carefully. The thought of danger coming to his home worried him, but he also knew that Kiona had nowhere else to go. He had to protect her, just as she had risked herself by coming to him. "We'll be careful," he said firmly. "No one is coming in here unnoticed. You'll stay hidden if you need to, and I'll make sure no harm comes to you or my family." Kiona gave a small, relieved nod. "Thank you. That means more than I can say." The day passed slowly. Daniel went about his chores, feeding the horses and repairing fences. While keeping an eye on Kiona, she spent most of the morning by the fire, preparing simple herbal teas and sharing her knowledge of natural remedies with him. Daniel listened with growing fascination. She showed him how certain herbs could ease pain, reduce fever, or calm anxiety. Each demonstration was careful and precise, and he could see that she truly knew what she was doing by midday. Kiona's attention shifted toward Emily, Daniel's young daughter, who had been watching curiously from the doorway. Emily had been cautious at first, unsure of this stranger in her home, but Kiona smiled warmly at her, kneeling to be at her eye level. "Hello," she said softly. "I'm Kiona. I promise I won't hurt you." Emily hesitated, then slowly stepped closer. Kiona offered her a small cup of warm tea, just like the one she had given Daniel. "Drink slowly," she said. "It will help you feel better if you're cold." Emily sipped, then smiled tentatively. "You're nice," she said. Kiona smiled back. "And you're very brave. I can tell." Daniel watched the interaction with surprise and relief. He had been worried about how Emily would react, but the connection between the two of them seemed natural. Kiona had a way of putting people at ease, making them feel safe, even in difficult situations. As afternoon turned to evening, Daniel and Kiona continued to talk. She shared stories of her village, of her family, and of the challenges she had faced. Each story revealed more about her resilience, her courage, and her sense of responsibility. Daniel found himself drawn to her strength, and he realized that she was more than just a stranger in need. She was someone who could change their lives in ways he hadn't yet imagined. The sun began to set, casting long shadows across the snow outside. Kiona stood by the window, looking out at the quiet landscape. "I don't want to bring trouble to you," she said softly. "I never asked for help before, but I couldn't survive on my own out there. And now that I'm here, I don't know what the future holds." Daniel walked over and placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "You won't bring trouble to us," he said. "We'll face whatever comes together. You're safe here, and you'll always have a place in this home as long as you want it." Kiana's eyes glistened with unshed tears. She nodded, a mixture of gratitude and relief on her face. "Thank you," she whispered again. I don't know how to repay you." Daniel shook his head. "You don't need to repay me. Just being here, safe, is enough. We'll figure everything else out in time." The evening grew darker, and the wind outside howled through the trees. Daniel built a larger fire in the hearth, making sure it would last through the night. Kiona helped, carefully arranging logs and adding herbs that gave a faint, comforting scent to the room. Together, they created a small bubble of warmth and safety in a world that felt cold and uncertain. As night fell, Daniel realized that this day, which had begun like any other, had become extraordinary. A stranger had come into his home, risking everything to survive. And in doing so, she had opened the door to something new, a connection, a sense of hope, and the promise of change. Kiona sat quietly by the fire, her hands wrapped around her cup of tea. Daniel could see the tension in her shoulders slowly melting, the exhaustion of the past days leaving her body. She was still cautious, still wary of what might come next. But there was also a sense of peace that came from being safe, even if only for a short while. Daniel looked at her and thought about what she had said the night before. "I can offer what no other woman can." He didn't fully understand it yet, but he felt that somehow her presence in his life was meaningful. Something had shifted in that quiet ranch house, and he sensed that their meeting was the start of something far greater than either of them could imagine. Outside, the snow continued to fall gently, covering the world in white silence. Inside, two lives, strangers yet connected, shared a small moment of warmth, trust, and understanding. And as the night approached, Daniel knew one thing with certainty. He would do whatever it took to protect Kiona, just as she had risked everything to survive. The morning after her first night in Daniel's home arrived quietly, with soft sunlight reflecting off the snow outside. The ranch was calm, almost peaceful, but inside, tension began to rise. Daniel was in the kitchen preparing breakfast when he heard a faint cough from the next room. His heart skipped a beat as he rushed toward Emily, his young daughter, who had been playing quietly by the fire. Emily's face was pale, and a thin sheen of sweat covered her forehead. She looked tired, and her small frame seemed even smaller under the thick blanket Daniel had wrapped around her the night before. Panic surged through him. "Emily," he said, kneeling beside her, "you're burning up. Why didn't you tell me sooner?" Emily whispered weakly, "I didn't want to worry you, Daddy." Her small hand reached out for his, trembling. Daniel's mind raced. He had lost his wife years ago to illness, and he couldn't bear the thought of losing Emily too. He thought immediately of the small-town clinic, but it was a long ride in the snow, and he feared she wouldn't make it there safely. Then he remembered Kiona, who had been quiet and thoughtful by the fire, watching the snow fall. Daniel had no idea if her abilities were real, but in that moment, he was willing to try anything to save his daughter. "Kiona," he called urgently, "Emily's sick. Can you help her?" Kiona's eyes widened slightly and she sprang into action with surprising calmness. She knelt beside Emily, placing her hands gently on the girl's forehead. Daniel watched in awe as her eyes closed and she focused, whispering softly under her breath. He had never seen anyone move with such precision, such confidence. "She has a fever," Kiona said, her voice steady. "But it's not dangerous if we act quickly. I can help her recover. You have herbs, don't you?" Daniel nodded. "Yes, some in the pantry. But I don't know what to do." Kiona smiled faintly, a mixture of reassurance and concentration in her expression. "I'll guide you. It's simple if you follow my instructions exactly." She reached for the herbal mixture she had taught Daniel about the day before. Carefully, she prepared a small drink, adding precise amounts of each ingredient. The scent of the herbs was strong but soothing. "Drink this slowly," she instructed Emily, handing her the cup. "It will help cool your body and fight the fever." Emily obeyed, her eyes wide with curiosity and trust. Kiona gently guided her, showing her how to breathe deeply and slowly, calming her body and mind. Daniel could hardly believe what he was seeing. Minutes passed, and Emily's breathing began to even out. The color returned to her cheeks, faintly but noticeably. Her small hands stopped trembling, and she looked up at Kiona with wonder in her eyes. It's working," she whispered. Kiona nodded. "It's working because you listened, Emily. Your body knows what to do once we guide it. Now rest, and it will get better." Daniel's eyes filled with tears, a mixture of relief and disbelief. He had never seen anyone heal a person so quickly, especially with such gentle, natural methods. "Thank you," he said, his voice choked. I don't know how to repay you." Kiona shook her head. "You don't need to repay me. Emily's life is enough." She glanced at Daniel seriously. "But you must promise to keep her safe. There are people who wouldn't hesitate to use her as a reason to find me. You must protect her as you would your own life." Daniel nodded firmly. "I promise." He felt a strange mix of fear and trust. He didn't fully understand Kiona's abilities, but he now knew without doubt that she was extraordinary, as Emily rested in the warmth of the fire. Kiona began to explain more about her powers, trying to make them understandable. "I can feel energy in a way. Illness, danger, even emotions. It's not magic, it's understanding the world in a different way. My people have trained for this all our lives, but it's rare even among my people to have this level of awareness. That's why they want me. They want control over something they don't understand." Daniel listened intently, fascinated by her words. "So this is why they were after you? Because of your gift?" Kiona nodded. "Yes, and it's dangerous. I've avoided capture before, but never for this long. I've never asked for help. Never trusted anyone outside my people. But you were kind. That's why I came to you. You saved my life by letting me in." Daniel felt a surge of protectiveness. This woman, who had come into his life unexpectedly, had not only saved herself, but was now saving his daughter. He realized that he owed her not just safety, but understanding and support. The day passed slowly. Daniel stayed near Emily, watching over her while Kiona moved around the house, preparing more herbal remedies and explaining how to use them in case of need. Her movements were calm, deliberate, and full of quiet authority. Emily, growing stronger by the hour, began to smile and even laugh a little. Daniel watched, feeling a weight lift from his heart that he hadn't realized had been there. By late afternoon, Daniel noticed a change in Kiona. Her eyes, which had carried the weight of fear and exhaustion, now held something different: confidence and perhaps hope. "You've helped her," Daniel said quietly. "I don't know how you do it, but you saved her life today." Kiona looked at him and smiled faintly. "I didn't do it alone. Emily's body helped too. I only guided her. That's how my people teach it. Healing is never one-sided." Daniel nodded slowly, realizing that there was wisdom in her words. There was more to her than just abilities. There was understanding, compassion, and a deep sense of responsibility. He began to see why she had said she could offer something no other woman could. It wasn't just her gifts. It was her courage, her knowledge, and the way she used them to help others without seeking reward. As evening approached, the wind outside grew colder, rattling the windows of the small house. Daniel placed another log on the fire, watching the flames dance. Emily had fallen asleep in her chair, peaceful and warm. Kiona sat nearby, quietly arranging the herbs she had used earlier, ensuring everything was ready for the night. Daniel looked at her thoughtfully. "You've risked so much to survive," he said softly. "Why would you trust me so quickly?" Kiona met his gaze, her dark eyes steady. "Because I had no other choice," she replied honestly, "but also because I sensed that you were different. You don't just act out of fear or selfishness. You act out of kindness. That's rare, and I knew I could trust you even without knowing you fully." Daniel felt a strange warmth in his chest, a mixture of admiration and respect. He realized that meeting Kiona had changed something in him. She had entered his home in the cold of the night, desperate and afraid, and now by day, she had become someone he depended on, not just to help Emily, but to remind him of hope, trust, and courage in a world that often seemed harsh and unforgiving. Outside, the snow continued to fall silently, covering the world in white. Inside, the small ranch house was filled with warmth, light, and a sense of safety that felt almost miraculous. Daniel watched Kiona move quietly around the room, organizing the herbs and preparing for whatever the night might bring. He knew that the threats she had mentioned were real and that danger could come at any moment. But for now, she was here, and Emily was safe. And in that moment, Daniel understood something he had never realized before. Kiona's words from the first night echoed in his mind. "I can offer what no other woman can." He hadn't fully grasped their meaning then, but now he could see a glimpse of it. She wasn't just extraordinary because of her abilities. She was extraordinary because of the courage, wisdom, and kindness she brought into the lives of those around her. As night fell, Daniel made sure Emily was tucked safely in bed. Kiona stayed by the fire, quietly preparing for the next day, while Daniel sat nearby, thinking about what had happened. The events of the past 24 hours had changed everything. He had witnessed a remarkable act of healing, seen courage in the face of danger, and understood that trust once earned could be a powerful thing. And as the flames flickered, casting warm light across the room, Daniel felt a growing sense of certainty. Kiona had not just come to his home for safety, she had come to change their lives. And he, for the first time in years, felt ready to face whatever came next, knowing that with her by their side, they could survive anything. The next morning began quietly, but Daniel sensed an unease he couldn't shake. The snow-covered ranch looked peaceful outside, the horses quietly munching on hay in the barn, but something felt wrong. Daniel's eyes scanned the horizon, noticing faint tracks in the snow near the fence line. They were too deliberate to be made by an animal. His heart tightened. "Kiona," he called softly, motioning for her to join him by the window. "Look at these tracks. They're too big for a deer. Someone's been here." Kiona's expression darkened immediately. She stepped closer, examining the snow through the window. "They're careful," she said quietly. "They don't want to be seen, but they're searching. They've tracked me this far." Daniel's chest tightened. "You mean the people you warned me about?" She nodded. "Yes. They've been following me for weeks, maybe months. They're dangerous, and they won't stop until they find me. And if they come here, they could hurt your family." Her voice trembled slightly, not from fear, but from the weight of responsibility she carried. Daniel swallowed hard. He had prepared for hard winters, storms, and even wild animals. But this was different. The danger was human, and it was close. He realized that protecting Kiona meant protecting Emily as well, and he could not fail. "We have to be careful," he said firmly. "No one gets in here without me knowing." He looked at Kiona. "Can you stay hidden if it comes to that?" Kiona nodded. "I can. But hiding is only temporary. If they find out I'm here, they won't hesitate to use force. We need a plan." They spent the morning preparing the ranch. Daniel checked all the doors and windows, making sure they were secure. He moved furniture to block easy access points, and he and Kiona devised signals to warn each other if anyone approached. Kiona, calm and precise, shared knowledge from her people about sensing danger and understanding movement, teaching Daniel how to notice subtle signs of intruders by afternoon. The tension in the house was nearly unbearable. Emily sensed it too, asking questions with wide eyes. "Daddy, who's coming?" she asked softly. Daniel knelt beside her, trying to appear calm. "No one, sweetie. Just some people we don't know. But you're safe here, I promise. We're going to protect you." Emily nodded slowly, trusting him, and turned back to her drawings on the table. But Daniel knew he couldn't rely only on hope. The threats were real, and they were close. Late that afternoon, a sound from outside made both Daniel and Kiona freeze. A soft crunch in the snow footsteps approaching. Daniel grabbed a lantern, moving quietly to the front door. Kiona positioned herself in a place where she could observe without being seen. The door rattled slightly. Daniel held his breath. He peeked through the window and saw two men standing just beyond the fence. They were well-dressed but rugged, moving with purpose. Their eyes scanned the property, searching. Daniel recognized the determination of people who were used to getting what they wanted. "They're here," Kiona whispered, her voice calm but intense. "We need to stay quiet and watch. Don't make a move unless necessary." Daniel nodded, his hand resting on the doorframe as he considered his options. Confronting them directly could be dangerous, but letting them roam near the house unchallenged was not an option. He looked at Kiona. "We have to protect Emily and ourselves. Can you help me if it comes to that?" Kiona's eyes were steady. "Yes, but remember, our goal is to avoid conflict if possible. They are skilled, but we are prepared. Trust me." The men lingered for a moment, speaking quietly to each other, then moved closer to the fence. Daniel's heart pounded. He signaled to Kiona, who quietly stepped back and prepared herself. She whispered instructions to Daniel about how to respond if the men tried to enter the house. Minutes passed, like hours. Daniel stayed tense, lantern in hand, watching the strangers. Emily slept peacefully upstairs, unaware of the danger lurking nearby. He prayed that they would leave, that this threat would pass without incident. Then one of the men raised his hand, pointing toward the house. Daniel recognized the motion he had been spotted. The man shouted something that Daniel couldn't hear over the wind. Daniel knew the time for subtlety was over. He moved quickly, stepping outside and confronting the men. "Who are you? What do you want?" he demanded. His voice was steady, though his heart raced. The men looked at him, surprised by his sudden appearance. "We're looking for someone," one said, his tone calm but firm. "We have business with her." Daniel's jaw tightened. "She's not here for your business. Leave now or you'll regret it." Kiona emerged quietly from her hiding place, standing beside Daniel. Her presence was calm but commanding, as if she were part of the house itself. The men hesitated, sensing something unusual about her. "She's not going anywhere with you," Kiona said softly, her voice carrying a quiet authority. "Turn back. You won't find her here." For a moment, the wind seemed to hold its breath. The men exchanged looks, uncertain. They had not expected resistance, especially not from a rancher and a young woman. Kiona's calmness unnerved them. Daniel stepped closer to her, feeling a strange surge of courage. "Go," he said firmly. "Leave this place, and don't return." The men hesitated longer, then slowly backed away, realizing that their intimidation would not work here. They glanced at Kiona one last time, perhaps sensing that she was not an ordinary woman, and then turned, retreating into the snow. Once they were gone, Daniel let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. He looked at Kiona, feeling a mix of relief and awe. You really are extraordinary," he said quietly. Kiona shook her head slightly, her expression calm but weary. "I only did what was necessary. We can't let fear control us. That's what they want." Daniel nodded, understanding the truth in her words. She had not only protected herself, but she had also helped him protect his family. He felt a growing sense of gratitude and respect for her. Later, as the sun began to set, they returned inside. Daniel checked on Emily, who had slept through the confrontation, and Kiona prepared a simple meal for them. The warmth of the house felt even more comforting after the tension outside. They sat together quietly, the fire casting a golden glow around the room. Daniel looked at Kiona, realizing how much he had come to trust her in such a short time. "You saved us today," he said softly. "I don't know how to thank you." Kiona smiled faintly. "You don't need to thank me. Just keep safe and protect each other. That is enough." Daniel nodded, feeling the weight of her words. He realized that her presence in his life was more than a coincidence. She had come to his door in the cold, seeking help, and in return, she had brought courage, wisdom, and a strength he hadn't known he needed. As night fell and the wind howled outside, Daniel and Kiona prepared for whatever might come next. They knew the danger could return, but they also knew they were stronger together. For the first time, Daniel felt a sense of determination that he hadn't felt in years. He would not let anyone harm his family, and he would not let Kiona face danger alone, and in that quiet ranch house. Amidst the cold snow and dark night, Daniel understood something important. Kiona's words from the first night, "I can offer what no other woman can," were true. Not just because of her abilities, but because of her courage, her wisdom, and her unshakable sense of responsibility. She was extraordinary in every way, and together, they would face whatever challenges lay ahead. The night passed slowly, but for the first time, Daniel felt hope. He had faced danger, protected his family, and seen the extraordinary strength of a woman who had come into his life by chance. He knew the future would bring challenges, but he also knew that with Kiona by their side, they could survive anything. Outside, snow fell gently, covering the world in white silence. Inside, the small ranch house was filled with warmth, trust, and a quiet determination. Daniel and Kiona sat by the fire, ready for whatever the next day might bring, knowing that together, they were stronger than any threat that came their way. The morning sun rose slowly over the snow-covered ranch, painting the landscape with soft gold and pink hues. Daniel awoke to a quiet house. Emily was already up, sitting by the fire with a blanket wrapped around her shoulders, coloring a picture of the ranch. Her laughter was light and happy, a sound that warmed Daniel's heart more than the fire ever could. He smiled softly, realizing how much peace Kiona had brought into their home in such a short time. Kiona was already moving quietly in the kitchen, preparing a simple breakfast of bread, boiled eggs, and herbal tea. Her calm presence filled the room, and Daniel noticed that her face, once tense from fear, now showed confidence and quiet relief. She had survived the night of danger, and in doing so, has become an inseparable part of their lives. "Good morning, Daniel," said softly, approaching her. "Sleep well?" Kiona looked up and smiled faintly. "Better than I expected," she admitted. "I think things are finally settling." Daniel nodded, glancing toward Emily. "Thanks to you, she's doing much better. I don't know how to explain it, but I'm grateful beyond words." Kiona shook her head. "You don't need to explain. You've done your part too, keeping her safe and trusting me. That's enough." The peaceful morning, however, did not last long. From the edge of the property, the distant sound of horses' hooves on snow caught Daniel's attention. He squinted toward the horizon and saw a small group of riders approaching the ranch. His heart tightened. "Kiona," he whispered, "they're back." Kiona's eyes narrowed, but there was no fear this time, only determination. "We've prepared for this. They won't find what they're looking for," she said calmly. Daniel moved quickly, rounding up Emily and taking her to a safe spot inside the house, hidden from view. Kiona positioned herself near the main entrance, ready to act if necessary. The men rode closer, but this time, Daniel noticed something different. They seemed hesitant, unsure, even wary. It was as if they could sense that this ranch was not the easy target they had hoped for. As the men approached, Daniel stepped outside, standing tall despite the snow and cold. Kiona emerged behind him, her presence calm yet commanding. The men slowed their horses, scanning the area cautiously. "Who's in charge here?" One of them called. His voice was sharp, demanding. Daniel's voice was steady. "I am. You will not harm anyone here. Leave now, or you'll face the consequences." Kiona stepped closer, her gaze fixed on the men. "You've come this far," she said softly, but with authority. "I am not going anywhere with you." Turn back. "You will find nothing here." The men exchanged uncertain glances. They had expected an easy confrontation, intimidation that would force compliance. But the calm determination in Daniel and Kiona unnerved them. They could see that these two were prepared, united, and fearless. After a tense moment, the leader of the group sighed and nodded to his companions. "We'll leave for now," he said. Slowly, they turned their horses, retreating into the snowy horizon. It was clear they had realized this ranch was not an easy place to intimidate or conquer. Daniel let out a deep breath, relief flooding through him. He glanced at Kiona, admiration and gratitude shining in his eyes. You were incredible," he said softly. "I've never seen anyone face danger like that." Kiona shook her head modestly. "I didn't do it alone. We prepared and we protected each other. That's what matters." Later that day, as the sun began to lower, casting a golden glow across the snow, Daniel gathered his thoughts. He realized how much Kiona had changed their lives, not just by protecting Emily, but by bringing courage, trust, and hope into their home. She had become more than a visitor. She had become part of their family. "Would you stay?" Daniel asked carefully. "I mean, you don't have to, but I think we could use you here, permanently. You've changed everything for us, Kiona. For Emily, and for me." Kiona looked at him, surprise flashing across her face. She had not expected such an offer, not after everything she had endured. "Stay," she repeated softly. "Yes," Daniel said, his voice firm and kind. "You've risked so much to survive, and in return you've brought safety, hope, and something I can't explain. This house, this ranch, it's open to you. You don't have to face the world alone anymore." Kiona's eyes glistened with unshed tears. She had spent months running, hiding, trusting no one. And now, here was someone offering her safety, belonging, and acceptance. Slowly she nodded. "I would like that," she whispered. The relief on Daniel's face was visible, but it was accompanied by something deeper, a sense of completion, as if a missing part of their lives had finally returned. Emily, who had been watching quietly, ran to Kiona and threw her arms around her waist. "I'm glad you're staying," she exclaimed. Kiona hugged her back, laughing softly for the first time in what felt like ages. "I'm glad too, Emily," she said warmly. "I promise to take care of you." As the day turned to evening, the ranch settled into a peaceful rhythm. Kiona helped with chores, taught Emily simple lessons about herbs and natural remedies, and shared stories of her village. Daniel watched them, a quiet sense of contentment filling him. He realized that this house, once filled only with memories of loss, was now alive with warmth, laughter, and hope. Night came, and Daniel prepared a larger fire in the hearth. The three of them sat together, the soft glow of the flames illuminating their faces. Daniel looked at Kiona and felt a deep gratitude. She had not only saved Emily's life, but had also shown him the strength of courage, trust, and compassion. "Kiona," he said quietly, "you've brought something here that I never thought I'd see again, hope. Thank you." She smiled softly, a mixture of humility and pride. "You gave me safety," she replied. "I didn't just survive because of myself. I survived because you let me in. That's all I needed." Daniel nodded, understanding the depth of her words. Their meeting, which had seemed like chance, had become fate. The woman who had appeared at his door in the cold had not only changed their lives, she had saved them, in ways beyond the physical, teaching them trust, courage, and love. The night stretched on, quiet and calm. The snow continued to fall outside, but inside, the small ranch house was alive with warmth, light, and a sense of belonging. Daniel realized that for the first time in years he felt truly at peace. He had faced danger, protected his family, and witnessed the extraordinary strength of a woman who would come into their lives when they needed her most. Kiona sat quietly, sipping tea, her gaze thoughtful but serene. She had faced countless dangers, but for the first time, she felt safe. She was no longer running, hiding, or fearing for her life. She had found a home, a family, and a place where she could finally breathe freely. Emily, curled up with a small blanket and a warm smile, looked up at her father and Kiona. "I'm happy," she said softly. Daniel smiled, feeling his heart swell. "So am I, Emily. So am I." And in that quiet ranch house, amidst the cold snow and dark night, 3 lives were forever changed. Daniel had gained courage, Emily had gained hope, and Kiona had gained a home. The danger that had once threatened them was gone, replaced by warmth, safety, and a bond that could never be broken. The fire flickered softly, casting shadows that danced across the walls. Outside, the snow continued to fall, covering the world in white silence. Inside, there was light, laughter, and a sense of belonging that would carry them through whatever challenges came next. Kiona's words from the first night echoed in Daniel's mind one final time. "I can offer what no other woman can." He now understood their true meaning, not just her abilities, but the courage, love, and hope she had brought into their lives. And with that understanding, Daniel knew that they had all found something rare and extraordinary: a family, a home, and a future together. The night passed peacefully, and for the first time in a long time, the ranch was quiet in the way that only true safety and happiness can bring. Daniel, Emily, and Kiona sat together, ready to face tomorrow, knowing that no matter what came, they would face it as one.